All right, so
We'll be here.
I'm going to talk about the Korean War. And the Korean War is often called the Forgotten War. But the Korean War, it definitely should never be forgotten. General MacArthur said in his address to Congress, "The magnificence of the courage and fortitude of the Korean people defies description. They have chosen risk of death rather than slavery." It's kind of interesting. It reminds me of the sentiment of Americans when we were fighting for our independence. So World War II ended in 1945, and at the time, Japan had encompassed the Korean Peninsula and declared Korea a part of the Japanese Empire. So at the end of World War II, the Allies declared that Korea would become an independent and free country. For the practical purposes of accepting the Japanese surrender, the Allies decided that the currently occupying Allied forces, which were the Soviets and the US in Korea, would accept their surrender and split the country at the 38th parallel so that the US and Soviet forces were overlapping each other. Now this separation at the 38th parallel was never intended to be a border or prevent Koreans from going anywhere. But the Soviet army quickly closed all traffic going across the 30th parallel and closed the country and began setting up a communist regime. On June 25th, 1950, North Korea and her army came across the parallel and attacked South Korea. Though massively outnumbered and horribly ill-equipped, the South Korean armies, called the Republic of Korea, or ROK, struggled very valiantly to fight off this impending attack and failed. Within 3 days, the North Koreans had captured Seoul, which, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but that was the South Korean capital. At this time, the Republic of Korea asked the U.S. for help, and the U.S. quickly redeployed the troops they had in Japan over to Korea, though they were still massively outnumbered and ill-equipped. Within just a few weeks, North Korea had captured almost all of the South Korean peninsula, and on July 29, 1950, the UN Lieutenant General Walton Walker gave a stand or die order at Busan. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly either. Busan was the last open deep water port in Korea. It was vital that it not be captured. The 140-mile long defensive line was called the Busan Perimeter, and the battle that was fought along that line lasted 6 weeks. During this time, the UN was able to gather forces, supplies, and political support to come in and help the Koreans. So on September 15th, the UN began landings at Incheon and captured the beaches quite quickly. The next day, the UN and ROK forces broke through the enemy lines at Busan, and this turned the tide of the war, and the South Koreans and the UN forces were able to force the North Korean forces back north. By winter, the North Korean forces had been pushed back almost to the Yalu River, and most of North Korea had been captured by UN and ROK forces. But this was stopped by Communist China, who came across the Yalu River and forced ROK and South Korea back down below the 38th parallel. By spring, the North Koreans came across the border once again in an attack and recaptured Seoul. By March 14th, ROK and UN forces pushed the North Koreans back and took Seoul once again. Seoul changed hands 4 times during the war. By June 1951, China and North Korean officials agreed to begin ceasefire discussions with UN, but fighting keeps going on during this time. By October of that same year, both sides had agreed on almost all issues except the handling of POWs. And this caused a stalemate in negotiations, and fighting kept going on for 2 years. In 1943, the death of Joseph Stalin brought the Soviet support of the war to a halt, and this changed things, and negotiations were able to move forward once again. On July 27th of 1953, armistice was signed, though no peace treaty was ever signed, and the border between the Koreans went back to where it was, roughly along the 38th parallel, about the same place as it was before the war. In all this time, there were 154,246 U.S. dead and 526,833 UN dead. There were 103,284 U.S. wounded and 1,064,453 UN wounded, 8,177 U.S. missing, and 470,267 UN missing, 7,140 U.S. captured, and 92,970 UN captured. General MacArthur said in his final address to Congress that I have just left your sons fighting in Korea. They have met all tests there, and I can report to you without reservation that they are splendid in every way. It may seem like the Korean War was pointless when we look back at it now. It doesn't seem like anything changed. But if you think that the war was pointless, then just find a South Korean or North Korean free to speak, and they will very quickly tell you just how wrong you are. Thank you.